بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم بارك لنا في جمعنا هذا، اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مباركا مرحوما، واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما، ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا، وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان، واجعلنا من عبادك الراشدين. Oh Allah, we ask you to fill our hearts with your abundant mercy and to fill our homes with your abundant mercy. Oh Allah, we ask you to teach us of the lessons and the life and times of our righteous predecessors and of our dearly beloved Prophet ﷺ. Oh Allah, bless us to follow in their footsteps and gather us with them in your shade, the day that there's no shade but yours. Oh Allah, we ask you to help us navigate through every difficulty and every trial in life. Grant us understanding of our deen. Allahumma faqihna fi deen. Oh Allah, grant us understanding of our deen. Oh Allah, make the best of our days the last of our days, and the best of our actions the last of our actions, and the best day of all, the day that we meet you and you are pleased with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ameen, ameen, wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Amma ba'd. I am happy to be here with you guys tonight in the community hub as we have the last session about the life of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ardah. And we spent a number of sessions discussing different aspects of his life and the things that happened during his khilafah and his reign. And today we're going to conclude this blessed life and legacy. And next week we're going to have a guest with us, and that is our dear brother Munir Hamda, who's going to be discussing the life of Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah, insha'Allah ta'ala. Last week we discussed some of the factors that played into the fitna and the strife that happened among the companions during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Uthman. And we said that one of the major factors for this fitna was the fact that there was a great affluence that the ummah enjoyed as a result of the Muslim expansion. The Muslim wars against the Persian Empire and the Muslim wars against the Roman Empire, and there was a great sense of affluence. And we mentioned last week that the Prophet ﷺ said that the fitna of this ummah is in wealth and affluence. And we discussed many aspects of this and how the companions themselves felt this as a big trial. So we said that this was one of the causes. The second cause was a change in the quality of people. It's very important to note that although we're still very early on in the message of Islam during the Khilafah of Uthman, Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali were the exception, they were not the rule. Especially when we're talking about after the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. The likes of these great companions and these elders among the companions was not the norm. Many of the people at the time were among those who either entered in the very last days of the Prophet ﷺ or had entered as a result of the Muslim expansion. They were new Muslims. They were not even companions. They were from the tabi'een, the generation after. So there was a great deal that they needed to learn and a great deal of complications and challenges that the Muslims faced because of the newcomers to the faith. As you know, we mentioned during the life of Sayyidina Abu Bakr that most of the ummah abandoned the Islam in its entirety after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, except for a few pockets here and there, and by the blessings of the efforts of Abu Bakr, he kept the ummah intact and together. So this was two reasons. Again, a change in the quality of people and a great affluence that came with the Muslim expansion. Now, we're speaking about a very sensitive subject, and that is the fitna that happened between the companions of our dearly beloved Prophet ﷺ. And it's very important to discuss the methodology that our righteous predecessors had towards this subject. When speaking of the fitna that happened between the companions, how should we view it? In what light should we view it? First off, it's very important to note that in this particular fitna, the murder of Sayyidina Uthman, no Sahabi took place in it in any way, in any shape or form. No companion of the Prophet supported it in any way. This was purely by some of the rebel detractors against Sayyidina Uthman from Egypt and from Al-Kufa and from a few other places. None of them were companions. The second thing that is important to note is that this is our righteous predecessors, they viewed this subject very sensitively. Because Allah mentioned the generation of the companions in the Quran. رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. And Imam Malik set the precedent for us. He said that Allah has protected our swords from being unsheathed in that fitna and that conflict, so we should protect our tongues from engaging and speaking about it. So our scholars speak very severely about those who begin attacking the integrity of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Unfortunately, there's still people to this day who unhash this issue for no good reason at all, except but to cause division between the Muslims. Now, after this issue is all said and done, the only reason we should revisit it is for the sake of learning lessons of how to conduct ourselves and handle situations of conflict and fitna. That's the only reason we should revisit it. But should we get into the nitty-gritty details of this person is upon batil and this person is upon falsehood and this person, his result will be this and this person did that and so on and so forth, this pointing fingers, it brings no good at all. Because this is something that has concluded over 1,000 years ago. So the fact that people still are rehashing this issue, it shows that there's fitna in their heart. There's no longer fitna on this issue on the ground, there's fitna in their heart. And our scholars warn that those who speak of this issue, speak about the integrity of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they are in danger of su'ul khatimah, of facing a bad result in their lives, because they're speaking about people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. And the Prophet Allah teaches us in a hadith al-Qudsi, "Man aada li waliyan faqad adhantuhu fil harb." Whenever you see some people speaking about someone who is at least apparently good and righteous and pious, whether they're a companion or otherwise, immediately retreat from that discussion. Because you do not want to make the mistake of falling into speaking about someone Allah loves. So if you see someone apparently righteous and apparently good, even if they're not a companion, even if they might be a scholar, or even if they might be a regular masjid goer, or even if they might be someone whom at least appears to be religious, don't be that person who engages in attacking that person's integrity, because you never know. The consequences for that could be very severe. So this is a little bit about the methodology of Sunni Islam towards that fitna. Now, last week we addressed some of the complaints that were leveled against Sayyidina Uthman. And last week we actually went in detail discussing the life of Sayyidina Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. And the reason why we did that was because one of the complaints leveled against Uthman was in the way that he treated Sayyidina Abu Dharr. So this was one of them. And these complaints were raised to Sayyidina Uthman in the year 35 after Hijrah by this group of rebels. They initially came to Uthman and they raised some complaints, and these complaints went back to a few different issues. First off, they went back to some complaints that they had against governors. Another complaint is that they wanted to change certain governors and replace them with others. They wanted other people to rule them. And another one was they wanted a larger percentage from the distribution of wealth from Bayt al-Mal. The Muslims were getting a lot of money. And of course, there was stipends given to the companions from Bayt al-Mal for their sacrifices in the early days of Islam. Their request was they wanted a higher percentage from this wealth. Sayyidina Uthman, he listened to all of their complaints and he actually tried to compromise with them to the best of his ability. And it's very difficult to be in a leadership position, especially when dealing with the likes of these types of people. Sayyidina Uthman was compelled to change the governor of Kufa 4 times during his khilafah. Because every time they would raise a complaint, he would listen to their complaint and he would abide by their will and he would change the governor. One of these governors he was forced to change was one of the senior companions of the Prophet, Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Right? Can you imagine that? These individuals who are newcomers to Islam, They never met the Prophet ﷺ. They were new to this deen. Their complaint against Sa'd was one was unjust, and another thing is that he doesn't pray properly. The fitna that had entered these individuals' hearts was very apparent in their words. Their complaint against Sa'd was they didn't think he prayed properly. And this is one of the senior companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Again, there's a few things that we have to note in the character of these individuals that Sayyidina Uthman had to deal with. Now, Sayyidina Uthman, he was a very soft and gentle person. And some say this is why he was taken advantage of by these individuals. Sayyidina Umar was sarim. No one would dare deal with Sayyidina Umar. If anyone would cross the line immediately, he would stand for the haqq, and there's no ifs, ands or buts about it. He would stand for the haqq. But Sayyidina Uthman tried to compromise with these individuals. He wanted to try to win over their hearts, but there was some difficulty in doing this because of their demands. So, and the fact that some of the people that were raising these complaints were not even Muslim at heart. One of the well-known individuals who was leading this rebellion against Sayyidina Uthman was a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Saba. And they say that the origins of this man is that he was Jewish and he converted to the deen only apparently. And he was leading this group of rebellion against Sayyidina Uthman. So we mentioned many of their complaints. What were their complaints? He answered every single one of their complaints. One of their complaints was he didn't attend Badr. And we already addressed this. Why didn't Sayyidina Uthman attend Badr? Because he was caring for the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, his wife, as she was in her last days. She passed away before they returned from Badr. And another complaint was that he wasn't there for Bay'at al-Ridwan. And Bay'at al-Ridwan was made for his sake, because the Prophet thought he was killed by the people of Mecca. And he asked the companions to pledge allegiance to the death in defense of Sayyidina Uthman. And another thing that they complained about Sayyidina Uthman was he retreated in Uhud. And we said this was indeed true, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acquitted the people who retreated in Uhud. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَلَّوْا مِنْكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ إِنَّمَا اسْتَزَلَّهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ بِبَعْضِ مَا كَسَبُوا وَلَقَدْ عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ. And we said, afu, what does it mean? It means to forgive something and remove it from the books entirely. It's different than maghfirah. Maghfirah means I forgive you, but I recognize you did something wrong. Afu is to completely erase the notion that you've done something wrong. And Allah has given them afu in His book. So this shows that they cannot hold this against Sayyidina Uthman. And another thing is, they complained that he changed certain things from Abu Bakr and Umar. We already addressed this. Another thing they complained about was his compilation of the Quran, and how he burned all other copies. And we already addressed this as well. And the other complaint was about his conflict with Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir. And we did not address this yet. So what was his complaint? What was his conflict with Sayyidina Ammar? Sayyidina Ammar, among the companions, was an individual who had certain criticisms of some of the policies of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. And is there anything wrong with this? Is there anything wrong with one of the companions having some criticisms of policies of the Khalifa? No, there isn't. This is a worldly issue. Sayyidina Uthman wasn't challenging the Khilafah of Uthman. Sayyidina Ammar wasn't challenging the Khilafah of Uthman. He had issues with certain policies. And you know what? They learned this attitude from the Prophet ﷺ himself. Because the companions learned from the Prophet that if it was a worldly issue, they can object and they could suggest otherwise. And we learned this from Sayyidina al-Habab ibn al-Mundhir in the battle of Badr. When the Prophet ﷺ chose a particular location for the encampment of the Muslims, Sayyidina al-Habab ibn al-Mundhir asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, أرأيت هذا المنزل أمنزلا أنزلكه الله ليس لنا أن نتقدمه ولا نتأخر عنه. And he said to the Prophet, is this a place that Allah has asked you to stay, that you cannot choose anything else? أم هو الرأي والحرب والمكيدة? Or is this your plotting and your strategy that has led you to choose this location? So then he told the Prophet ﷺ told him, no, this is الرأي والحرب والمكيدة. This is my strategy and my planning. This is a worldly issue. So then he told the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, فإن هذا ليس بمنزل. This is not a good place for us to stay. And then he gave him instructions, as you might know from the seerah. But the point is, if it's a worldly issue, there's no problem. Sayyidina Uthman, in worldly issues, maybe there could be differing views among the companions. So Sayyidina Ammar had these issues, but then something happened here. Sayyidina Ammar and Sayyidina Sa'd came to Sayyidina Uthman to raise these complaints about worldly issues. And Sayyidina Uthman had a gatekeeper for protection. Because again, it was a time of fitna and conflict. He had a gatekeeper. So they told the gatekeeper, we want to see Uthman, radiallahu anhu. And the gatekeeper went back to Sayyidina Uthman and he told him, it is Ammar and Sa'd and they want to meet with you. So Uthman was busy at the time. So he told the gatekeeper, tell them to come back later. But Sayyidina Ammar was really upset. And he said, no, I want to speak to him now. And I insist upon it. And at that point, the gatekeeper lost his temper. And again, this gatekeeper, I don't think he was from the companions of the Prophet. He lost his temper and he actually struck Sayyidina Ammar. And this was something that they used against Sayyidina Uthman. These individuals, these rebels who complained against Sayyidina Uthman, they said that he mistreated Sayyidina Ammar. And this wasn't the case. Sayyidina Uthman did not tell the man to strike Sayyidina Ammar, hasha. But this happened as people react, especially if they're not companions. This happens from how people react in states of conflict, in conditions of conflict. So this is what happened with Sayyidina Ammar. Sayyidina Ammar did not take a firm stance against Uthman in this conflict. Rather, in fact, when he saw the rebels sieging the house of Sayyidina Uthman, he denounced it and he condemned them. How could you siege the house of the Khalifa of the Khalifa of Islam? So, and Amir al-Mu'mineen. So, this is his conflict with Sayyidina Ammar. What was the main criticism they had against Sayyidina Uthman? The main criticism that they had against Sayyidina Uthman was they claimed that he favored his family and he put them in positions of power. Right? And now there's something very important to note here. Sayyidina Uthman was from which tribe? From the Bani Umayyah, right? And this is one of the major tribes of Quraysh. Bani Umayyah went after Sayyidina Uthman, went on to lead this ummah and be in a position of leadership for hundreds of years. This went on from, and they came, most of these khulafa came from the cousin of Sayyidina Uthman, who was Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, his son was Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And Abdul Malik ibn Marwan is I think the only person in our history who all four of his children were khulafa. So Bani Umayyah, most of them were not coming from the progeny of Sayyidina Muawiyah. This is a misconception. Only Sayyidina Muawiyah and then his son Yazid and then Muawiyah ibn Yazid were this sulala and this line. After that, they all came from a man by the name of Marwan ibn al-Hakam, who was the cousin of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. The point is, there were two major tribes from among Quraysh, Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim, the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. And Sayyidina Uthman was different than the two khulafa before, Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar. Those two khulafa, their tribes were not major tribes. Banu Adi, they were not Banu Taym and Banu Adi. They were not major tribes that had many notable companions among them. They were not a tribe of leadership, but you see from Bani Umayyah, starting with Abu Sufyan radiallahu anhu and his son Muawiyah onwards, they were known for leadership. They were people who were nobles among their people. So the point is, what are we trying to get at here? This criticism against Sayyidina Uthman, that he favored his family, needs to be addressed at a number of levels. Did he have people from Quraysh in leadership that were not from Bani Umayyah? Absolutely. Like Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he had a number of people that were not from Bani Umayyah. And he had people who were not even from Quraysh in positions of leadership. And on top of this, he even put whoever they suggested, if they wanted someone else to lead, he would always change it. And if he was to put someone from among his family members, he would hold them accountable just like everyone else. Right? But there's a sensitivity sometimes when a family member is put in a position of power. And now, these Sahaba, they're udul and they're upright individuals. They would hold their family accountable just like anyone else, as we know from the examples of Sayyidina Umar. But Sayyidina Umar did not want his son to be in this position for that very reason. Sayyidina Umar, when he put together the council of people who will choose the next Khalifa, he did not allow Abdullah ibn Umar to be one of the people who could possibly get the position. But he made him a consultant to the council. Why? He said it's enough that one of the people of Al-Khattab carry this burden. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he allowed his uncle Al-Abbas to get out of being a prisoner when he was captured in Badr, what did they start saying about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They started saying about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, that he was favoring Al-Abbas because he's his uncle. So it's a sensitivity by people. Did Sayyidina Uthman appoint certain individuals who were family members? Yes. But does that mean that an individual, just because he's a family member, he cannot be put in a position of power? No, it does not mean this. This is not a fair assessment, especially when you have among your family members some of the senior companions. As long as it doesn't become hukra alayhim and limited to them. But this did not happen. Even by the statement of his detractors, they recognized it wasn't only the family of Uthman that was leading, but some of the people in positions of power happened to be from his family, because his family was a family of leaders, as we mentioned. So this was one issue they raised against him, and this was their main complaint, that he favored his relatives. Now, going on with the life of Sayyidina Uthman. Again, I'm greatly abridging this story, because again, it was written in an entire book, and there are many other books written about it. But we want to finish it tonight. I'll remind you before we get to the siege and then followed by the murder, of the few hadiths that we shared in the very first session. And that's the Prophet ﷺ's advice to Uthman. What did the Prophet ﷺ say to Uthman will happen to him? The Prophet ﷺ said to Uthman that he will enter Jannah, or he told one of the companions to let Uthman come in and tell him he will enter Jannah after a trial that befalls him. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him glad tidings of Jannah. And one time Sayyidina Uthman was passing by, and the Prophet ﷺ said, يُقْتَلُ فِيهَا هَذَا الْمُقَنَّعُ يَوْمَئِذٍ مَظْلُومًا. The Prophet said there will be a fitna. And this individual who is covering his face will be murdered wrongfully. يُقْتَلُ فِيهَا هَذَا الْمُقَنَّعُ مَظْلُومًا. And then the narrator of the hadith went to see who was this individual, and he found it was Sayyidina Uthman. One time, the Prophet ﷺ was with Uthman, and he said the following: Ya Uthman, إن الله عز وجل عسى أن يلبسك قميصا فإن أرادك المنافقون على خلعه فلا تخلعه حتى تلقاني. The Prophet ﷺ gave him advice. He said, Allah will put you in a position, O Uthman, and the hypocrites will try to insist that you leave this position. So don't leave it until you meet me. This is the Prophet ﷺ giving Uthman glad tidings of what? Of martyrdom. That at the end of this fitna and trial, he will leave this dunya, and he will be in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. These are a few hadith about Sayyidina Uthman, and keep this in mind, because Sayyidina Uthman, there's something very special about what he did. Sayyidina Uthman refused to fight against these detractors and these rebels. And he refused to allow anyone to fight on his behalf. He refused, even to the very last moments. He was kicking the companions out of his home, and he told them, if I have any authority over you, no one raise a sword. No one raise a sword to face them off. Someone, when they hear this, they might say, why on earth would he do this? Why? If he has the power and he has the support, why wouldn't he fight against these individuals? Sayyidina Uthman had something bigger in mind. He knew that these individuals, they didn't care about the rest of the companions. They cared about him. They wanted to remove him from power. Everyone else, they didn't care about these other companions. They had no quarry with the other companions. This is the selflessness of Sayyidina Uthman. Unfortunately, we see ugly examples in our times of individuals, of fajara, who are in positions of leadership, who are willing to sacrifice their entire nation just so that they remain in power. Sayyidina Uthman refused. He did not want that. He did not want blood to be shed for his leadership. And he teaches us a beautiful example here. He refused to allow anyone to fight. This is one reason. He knew what they wanted, and they wanted him. And he didn't want anyone else to lose their life because of him. He wasn't worried about the position. This is one thing. The second thing is Sayyidina Uthman did not want to leave the position, and he refused to leave it. Why did he refuse to leave it? They said, we will not accept anything less than a full resignation. You have to leave this position. But he didn't leave it. Why? Because he took the advice of the companions around him. Sayyidina ibn Umar, he gave him sound advice, great advice. He told him the following. I'll get you the statement of Sayyidina ibn Umar. He said to him, إِذَا خَلَعْتَهَا مُخَلَّدٌ أَنْتَ فِي الدُّنْيا. Say if you were to leave this position, will you live forever in this world? So Sayyidina Uthman said, no. So he said to him, this is Ibn Umar, he's saying to Sayyidina Uthman, فَإِن لَمْ تَخْلَعْهَا هَلْ يَزِيدُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَقْتُلُوكَ. If you stay in this position, what's the worst they could possibly do? Can they do anything beyond kill you? So then he said, no, they can't do anything beyond kill me. So then he asked Sayyidina Uthman the following question, فَهَلْ يَمْلِكُونَ لَكَ جَنَّةً أَوْ نَارٍ. Do they have any authority over Jannah or hellfire? No, they don't. So then he went on to tell him, فَلَا أَرَى لَكَ أَن تَخْلَعَ قَمِيصًا قَمَّسَقَهُ اللَّهُ فَتَكُونَ سُنَّةً كُلَّمَا كَرِهَ قَوْمٌ خَلِيفَتَهُم أَوْ إِمَامَهُمْ قَتَلُوهُ. This is the reason why Sayyidina Uthman did not want to leave this position. It wasn't حِرْصًا عَلَى الْمَنْصِب. No, it was because of this beautiful instruction that he got from Sayyidina ibn Umar. And that he heard before from the Prophet ﷺ himself. He said, if you leave this position, it'll become a trend among people. That whenever they hate a leader of theirs, they'll gather together in a band or a group, and they will threaten him, and they will force him to leave this position. And he did not want this to become a trend in the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Uthman did not want anyone to die for him for a number of reasons. One is because he knew that this was the conflict that is going to lead to his martyrdom, and he knew he was going to die in this conflict. He knew what the result was. In fact, on the day of his murder, the night before, he saw a dream. And in this dream, the Prophet ﷺ told him, تَفْطُرْ عِنْدَنَا غَدًا يَا عُثْمَانَ. He told him, tomorrow you will have breakfast with us, O Uthman. Think of this. Sayyidina Uthman, on the day of his passing, he was fasting, he was praying, he prayed qiyam the night before, and he was reciting Quran as he was murdered, and he had the bishara of the Prophet ﷺ that he will meet him and he will be with him. So then why on earth would he worry, and why would he have jaza' of what these individuals are trying to do from around him? This is why Sayyidina Uthman did not take this up. What happened in this siege of Sayyidina Uthman's home? It lasted for about 40 days. And this siege, they gave him 3 options. A full resignation, or surrender yourself for qisas, because they claimed that Sayyidina Uthman sent a letter to, after Sayyidina Uthman addressed all of their complaints, the group was getting ready to leave, and they were getting ready to go back to their homes. But some among them had fitna in their hearts. They did not want people to go back to their homes. They wanted Uthman out of this position. So what did they do? So what happened? One of the theories they say that happened is among these rebels, they came up with a story. They say that they intercepted a letter, and this carrier had the khatam of the Khalifa, because back in the day, they would stamp their messages with a hand-carved ring that would signify that this is an official letter from the Khalifa. So they found this carrier with the ring itself, and with a letter written to the governor of Egypt, that when these rebels return back home, kill them all. This is what they said they had. Sayyidina Uthman denied it outright, blatantly denied it. He said, Wallahi, I have never seen such a thing, and I have never instructed of such a thing. And the strange thing here is they claim that they had the ring of the Khalifa there. So usually the Khalifa just puts his stamp, he doesn't give the ring. And anyway, so there's a whole lot of details that they mention around here that raise a lot of doubt. Sayyidina Uthman said, I swear by Allah that I have not instructed this, nor have I ever seen this letter. Now you bring two witnesses that prove otherwise. And they could not bring two witnesses that gives their side of the story. So they said, you either surrender yourself for qisas, you either do a full resignation, or you leave it up to us and we'll fight you to the death. So this is what was going to happen. What happened? 40 days. First off, they allowed Sayyidina Uthman to go out of his home. And he would go out and he would lead the people in prayers. But after some time, they sieged him in his home and they did not allow him to even leave his home. And in fact, one of these rebels began leading the people in prayers. Right? And after some time, they refused to allow any guests to enter into the home of Sayyidina Uthman. And then, after some time, they refused to allow water and food to enter the home of Sayyidina Uthman. A full siege. And Sayyidina Uthman was trying to negotiate with these individuals and talk them down from their deviance in their heart. Because like we said, brothers and sisters, these individuals, they actually went on to form a good number of the Khawarij. The Khawarij were a group in our history that they had some deviant thoughts and deviant ideologies. And the Prophet ﷺ actually referred to them in some of his hadith. He said, يأتي في آخر الزمان قوم حدثاء الأسنان سفهاء الأحلام يقولون من خير قول البرية يمرقون من الإسلام كما تمرق السهم من الرمية. Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith that there will come after me individuals that will appear young as young people with foolish thoughts and ideas. They had foolish thoughts and ideas. And the Prophet ﷺ said about this group, تَحْقُرُونَ صَلَاتَكُمْ إِلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ. You undermine your prayers, and you're the companions to their prayers. And you're fasting to their fasting. They appear to be very pious and devout individuals, but they have corrupt ideologies and misconceptions in their head. Sayyidina Uthman, every time they brought a shubha, he refuted it and he responded with clear evidence from the words of the Prophet ﷺ. One of these things, they threatened to kill him. And Sayyidina Uthman reacted. He said, إِنَّهُمْ لَيَتَوَعَّدُونَ بِالْقَتْلِ فقالوا له وَلِمَ يَقْتُلُونَني. Sayyidina Uthman said, وَلِمَ يَقْتُلُونَني. Why would they kill me? When I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, لا يحل دم امرئ مسلم إلا في إحدى ثلاث. The Prophet ﷺ gave clear reasons that would justify taking the life of another human being. And I have not done any of these reasons. So on what basis will they kill me? How on earth can they stop water from coming into my home? This Sayyidina Uthman, he went out and spoke with them. And he said, do you deny me of water when one day I am the one who purchased the well of Roma for the Muslims? And now it's called the well of Sayyidina Uthman. It's still, till this day, the Muslims are benefiting from the well of Uthman in Medina. How can you deny me of water when one day, when the Muslims were thirsty in Medina, I purchased the well of Roma so that they may drink and get their fill from water? Brothers and sisters, so this is the minds, these are the individuals that Sayyidina Uthman had to deal with. And unfortunately, these ideologies, these individuals, they presented themselves in a very pious way, and they presented themselves as defenders of justice. And we have these ideologies to this very day. These individuals who say very large statements, generalizations. We're standing with haqq and with truth, and we're defending the oppressed, and we're standing against the oppressors, and they are the biggest oppressors themselves. This ideology is still continuing on to this very day. So, brothers and sisters, going back to the siege. So now, the ummah faced this trial because of these individuals who none among them were companions. These individuals who had these grievances and then went about doing it by taking physical force in the Medina of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what happened next? Their adad, some of them say, was over 1,000. Some of them say initially there were a few hundred to 1,000, and then some of them say after that their numbers grew and they were a little bit over 1,000. Tamam. So what happened next was Sayyidina Uthman began addressing these individuals and negotiating with them. One of them stood in front of him and said, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. They said this to Sayyidina Uthman. It has been given permission for those who are fighting now because they were oppressed, and we were oppressed by you, O Uthman. So Sayyidina Uthman turned to him and said, I know when it was revealed and about whom it was revealed. It wasn't revealed about you. This was revealed about the companions and the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, when they were given permission to stand against their oppressors of Quraysh, who did so much wrongdoing upon them. So then the days go on, and towards the very end of Sayyidina Uthman's life, a number of the companions tried to plead with him. A number of the companions tried to encourage him, allow us to make a stand. Among them was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Among them was Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sayyidina Ali came to enter the house of Sayyidina Uthman, and he was not allowed to. And in fact, they stood in his way, and the family of Sayyidina Ali came to his aid and said, please, leave before they kill you too. So Sayyidina Ali took his turban and he threw it over the wall, signifying to Uthman, I'm here in your support, but they denied me from accessing you. So he was not allowed to see anyone. And at that point, towards the very end of his life, some of the companions, among them Sayyidina al-Hasan and al-Husayn, tried to stand, they were sent by their father Ali to defend Sayyidina Uthman and to make sure to try to protect him. And a few of the other companions, but Allah had a different plan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a different will. Please, children outside, please, the ones by the door over there, try not to make too much noise. Jazakumullah khair. Right. So, what happened next? They began to attack the house of Sayyidina Uthman. And in fact, they tried to burn down the door. And they were stopped by some of the companions. Then Sayyidina Uthman kicked all of those companions out. And he said, leave me be. And he sat down and he began reading Qur'an. And he opened the Qur'an, his copy of the Qur'an, and then the murderers entered the home. And one of them struck Sayyidina Uthman as he was reading from Surah Al-Baqarah, and the blood fell upon the words, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah will relieve you of them. These are the words. This is documented, historical documentation. Sayyidina Uthman, the first blood that was shed from his body, went on the Qur'an that he was reading from, and it fell on the words in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah will relieve you of them. All of these murderers that gathered upon him, all at one point were killed. All of them. Some of them were killed there. When he was struck, when Sayyidina Uthman was struck, his wife came to his defense and tried to hover over him. And one of the murderers took her and threw her aside. And one of his servants came rushing to her aid, and he killed the man that threw her aside. And then one of the other murderers came and he killed that servant. And there was an exchange, a battle back and forth. A few of the murderers were killed, and a few of Sayyidina Uthman's servants were killed, until Sayyidina Uthman was killed and martyred, and on the day of Jumu'ah. And on that day he was fasting and he was in a state of ibadah, and his murder left a severe rupture in the ummah. One of the things that Sayyidina Uthman pleaded with his detractors was that if you do this, then never will the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ become unified and whole. And one of the individuals who was in Medina at the time was Sayyidina al-Hasan al-Basri. He was a young man at the time. He was from the Tabi'een. And Sayyidina Hasan al-Basri said that Sayyidina Uthman spoke truth. Because indeed after he was killed, even though we stand in salah next to each other, still that division and that sense of division remains in the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This started a new stage in the life of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Never before this has the ummah officially clashed with each other and shed each other's blood. This happened after this incident in the house of Uthman, in which many of the servants of Uthman were left murdered, and his wife was attacked. and he was killed, and his house was robbed. And immediately these Khawarij, after they were done, after they did their deed, they went out, and the first thing they went to was Baytul Mal, and they took the wealth from Baytul Mal in Medina. That's what they were after. They were not after any just cause. They did not have any just claim to what they were doing. No justification whatsoever. And that's why Sayyidina Uthman, he was so assured at heart. When you know that you have done everything in your power to make a situation right, yet there are certain factors that stand against you, that are beyond your means, at that point, the mu'min can rest assured in the will and the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we learn from Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu arda. There was a lot to say. The companions had a lot to say about the murder of Sayyidina Uthman. Immediately after his passing, a group among the companions washed his body, and he was buried in the darkness of night. Because now the stage of the Khawarij and Ahl al-Fitna and Ahl al-Shar began to grow and escalate in the ranks of the Muslims. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His peace and blessings and ridwan upon Sayyidina Uthman. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not deny us the opportunity to meet Sayyidina Uthman in Jannah, and to meet him in his shade the day that there's no shade but his. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we learn from the lessons of this conflict and take the best of what this struggle has to offer of lessons for the ummah. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who hold high reverence and regard for the companions in the early generation. Allahumma ameen. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Any questions?
So, where were all these companion and the guard and army or police, whatever, to protect the Khalifa?
So as we said, there were a number of reasons why Sayyidina Uthman did not want them to get involved. In fact, they tried their best to get involved, but he took an oath. He istahlafahum billah. He said, by Allah, if you recognize any authority over you from me, then stop what you're doing. Many of them, they tried. In fact, one of them gathered an army of 500 soldiers and said, please, at your direction, we will attack these individuals, these rebels. But what didn't Uthman want to happen? He did not want the city of the Prophet ﷺ to become an area of bloodshed over him. He knew that their problem was with him specifically. And the companions were willing to defend him. But he knew what the end result was going to be because of wahi and revelation. Revelation to who? To Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Uthman knew that this was the trial that the Prophet was referring to. And he knew at the very end of this trial there was going to be martyrdom. And he knew that that's what these individuals were seeking alone. They wanted to remove him from Khilafah. So for this reason, he absolutely stood against anyone standing for him. He stood against the companions who wanted to stand along with him. For those reasons exactly. Because again, when you have that bloodshed, the bloodshed, as you can see in some of these conflicts. First off, it starts off with some protests, a few individuals die, next thing you know, a few 100,000 people are dead, and a few million people are displaced. It's a big thing. So, when the fitna creeps in, he did not want to be the first person under his supervision, the Muslims began shedding each other's blood. And Allah protected him from this. That they did not shed the blood under his khilafah. So, there's one question here. I read that Marwan was the one that sent the letter to Egypt. Did you come across any of the stories about that? Yeah, so actually Dr. Yasir Qadi mentions that one of his teachers actually wrote his dissertation on this subject. And he wrote it in a very detailed 2-volume assessment of all of the transmissions and all of the things that were said about what happened here. Now, he says that this idea, this notion that Marwan ibn al-Hakam was the one who sent the letter is something that is false and something out of character completely. Because Marwan ibn al-Hakam This Khalifa, this one who later became Khalifa, he was the scribe of Sayyidina Uthman. And he was actually from the children Sahaba. He was a young boy when the Prophet ﷺ was alive. He did not have any direct communication with the Prophet ﷺ. But still, he was a very pious person. He was known to be a person, a good Khalifa, a respected and noble person. In fact, he was one of the narrators of hadith. And Imam al-Bukhari mentions him and accepts him as a narrator of hadith in his Sahih. And Imam Bukhari, as you might know, when he put together his Sahih, he was very picky about those whom he accepted to narrate a hadith in his collection. Only the highest caliber of individuals did he allow to be included in Sahih al-Bukhari. So for this reason, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, was he this type of individual who would do such a thing? Some people might say he did it out of being overzealous and misguided. But then later on, Marwan ibn al-Hakam was there when Sayyidina Uthman was under the threat of being killed. He was his cousin. He could have easily told them, you know what, this was my mistake, and Uthman would have said that this is the mistake of my cousin, I will remove him from his post and I will hold him accountable for what he's done. But he saw his cousin, he saw Sayyidina Uthman being attacked and his family being attacked, and he saw his murder. And he did not say anything. This would be completely out of character for this individual who went on to become a pious and good Khalifa recognized by the mainstream Islam. So this is, Wallahu Alam, the answer to that question. Was it a letter sent by Marwan al-Hakam? That's one theory that's out there, but Dr. Yasir Qadhi mentions the more likely thing is that this came from the works of some of the zealous rebels among them. When they saw the rebels calming down and everyone was going to go back home, they wanted to create some fitna and some conspiracy that would cause everyone to be angry once again, and they'll unite once again and go to Medina to siege the house of Sayyidina Uthman. Wallahu alam. Any other questions? Any other questions? Huh? So no, that's not. That's very different. So he's saying, why would this signify the beginning of bloodshed between Muslims, although there have been accounts of some Muslims killing other Muslims? The situation with Usamah bin Zayd was different. Why was it different? The Muslims were on a military campaign, a military expedition, and their enemies were retreating. And one of the men that was retreating, he was a non-Muslim at the time, he said the Shahada, and he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. And Sayyidina Usamah thought that he was saying it to protect himself. He thought it wasn't genuine. So he went on and he killed the man. And so the Prophet ﷺ reprimanded Sayyidina Usamah, the most severe reprimand, to the extent that he said, I wish that was the first day I had become a Muslim. So this, we're not saying that before this incident, there was never an incident of a Muslim taking another Muslim's life. But from this point on, this is when civil war broke out between Muslims. Before this, there was never civil war between Muslims. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he was fighting against the apostates. And mani'i az-zakah. These are individuals who left the faith, left the religion. Most of them were individuals who left the faith entirely. And he was fighting against them because of their rejection of one of the tenets of Islam. Right? So, and Sayyidina Umar, so that was Sayyidina Abu Bakr. Sayyidina Umar, his battles were with the neighboring empires against the non-Muslims. Now Sayyidina Uthman, after his murder, this is when civil war became apparent among the ranks of the Muslims. So that's what we're talking about. Never before this was there ever civil war among the Muslims. No. Any other questions or comments? No? Jazakumullah khair.